This week on Nation's Business, we bring to you the highlights of Fiji's participation on the world stage at the 74th United Nations General Assembly in New York, going head-to-head and side-by-side with the bigger economies to discuss and work together on a range of international issues covered under the UN Charter, such as development, peace and security, international laws, and many more. New York City, the most populous city in the United States. Inside the city lies the United Nations headquarters. Every year in September, all member states meet in this unique forum for the General Assembly session. 193 states are represented in the General Assembly. Fiji joined the United Nations as its 127th member on the 13th of October 1970, just 3 days after gaining independence from Great Britain, based on its trust in the central role of the organization in the maintenance of international peace and security, developing friendly relations among nations and promoting social progress. To this end, Fiji committed to playing its part as a good global citizen in upholding the purpose and principle of the UN Charter. The 74th United Nations General Assembly in New York saw climate change take center stage of issues discussed with a special climate action summit held on the sidelines. Fijian Prime Minister Honorable Verengam Bainimarama delivered a powerful national statement and calling out world leaders for their climate inaction in the race to achieve net zero emission by 2050.
Small as we are, Fiji will fight. We will keep being a voice for more climate ambition, more climate action. We will continue to advance our case in the great forums of the world, not only on behalf of Fijians and other Pacific Islanders, but the climate vulnerable everywhere. My message to my own people, and especially young Fijian, is this. I hear you. Your nation, your government is doing everything it can to get the world to confront the climate threat. We took on the presidency of COP23, not for prestige, but to play our part in ensuring your survival and everything we hold dear, not only our precious surroundings, but our culture and traditions.
During the week-long UNJ meeting, Fiji answered the call of the UN Secretary General with more ambition to reduce emissions.
I say to any living in denial of the climate emergency, some of whom sit at the apex of certain governments, you readily listen to the scientists and take heed of the best research available in every other field of human endeavor. So you must not refuse to listen to the scientists on climate change. Every nation has a role to play, but only the industrial nations have the economic capacity and advanced technical know-how to lead the world to victory in this struggle. Defeat is not an option. So to those who did not come to New York this week with fresh plans to tackle the climate crisis, or who came merely out of curiosity to observe, again, please examine the evidence, examine the facts. And for the sake of our children and our grandchildren, face up to your responsibility to lead.
During the summit, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the world's leading climate scientist, issued its latest report saying that global average sea levels could increase by up to 1.1 meters by 2100. Fijian Prime Minister Honorable Bainimarama says this means a 10 centimeters rise from previous projections and has called it the worst warming scenario.
This is heartbreaking news for tens of thousands of Fijians in our coastal areas and all people in low-lying areas around the world.
Bainimarama says to stave off catastrophe, there is no alternative but to commit to net zero carbon emissions by 2050. Even at 1 degree warming, entire species are being made extinct and coral reefs are dying.
There is no alternative but to rapidly scale down the use of fossil fuels and rapidly scale up the development of renewable energy. No more coal mines, no more coal-powered electricity, because unless we stop burning coal, we have no hope of achieving net zero emissions in 31 years' time.
Bainimarama used the platform to call unity amongst world leaders to fight the more powerful enemy, climate change.
For all 195 member states of the United Nations, this is our moment of truth, the defining issue that will determine the course of history. Previous generations fought each other to uphold their own interests. But now the world must unite around our common interest to fight a more powerful enemy, a monster we created ourselves, a heating planet staggering under the excess of all who have taken its resilience for granted.
Fijian Prime Minister Bainimarama chairs the Pacific Small Island Developing States, or PSIDS, a group of 15 of the most climate-vulnerable nations in the Pacific. On the sidelines of the climate summit, PM Bainimarama, along with other Pacific leaders, hosted a breakfast at the UN headquarters where he launched the Pacific National Determined Contributions, or NDC hub logo, and celebrated the solidarity and friendship they all share.
I hoped, as we all did, that we could bring the world together to chart a course forward for our canoe that would ensure safe passage for our generation and generations to come.
Despite that first world countries are turning a blind eye to the impacts of climate change, the Fijian Prime Minister is urging the Pacific leaders not to give up and continue the fight.
Our tiller has been commandeered by nations and leaders who are either blind to the mounting danger or do not give it the importance it deserves, because they have yet to face the political imperative to act.
The Minister of Pacific Peoples in New Zealand, Honourable Aupito William Seo, strongly supports the Fijian Prime Minister and said climate change is the single biggest threat to the livelihood, security and well-being on the people of the Pacific. There is an urgent need for an ambitious action.
We're leading. We're leading by example, despite being a region that produces the fewest greenhouse gas emissions. Look around this place here, look at the symbols of power. How do we convince these powerful nations to look to our part of the world and save us? Save us. Defend our right to life. Defend our right to live on our ancestral land. And I just want to acknowledge the passion, the power, and the heart by which our Pacific leaders are leading by example.
During the 74th UNGA summit, there were many inspiring calls to action from young people, most of whom have been affected by climate change and are fighting to get the big emitters to cut down on their emissions. At the Youth Climate Summit, a prelude to the main Climate Action Summit, these young individuals did not cower in fear but choose to speak out about the impending terror if emissions are not cut now.
But we are afraid that after coming back home, this momentum will be lost. Our voices will just stay here and we won't be heard back in our countries.
The summit's standard bearer, 16-year-old Greta Thunberg of Sweden, was joined by a number of young Fijians.
This is all wrong. I shouldn't be up here. I should be back in school on the other side of the ocean. Yet you all come to us young people for hope. How dare you? You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. Entire ecosystems are collapsing. We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth. How dare you?
Fiji's young climate champions in New York included Timothy Naulusala, who rose to prominence as a leading voice in combating the climate crisis during Fiji's presidency of COP23.
I'm here because climate change has had a major impact on my life and on the lives of the children and families in my country, Fiji.
Timothy Naulusala, the youngest climate warrior who watched his village be ripped to pieces by T.C. Winston in 2016, is now demanding the world to act to spare other youths from suffering the same he personally endured.
For those of us who live in island nations, we are already seeing and feeling and living the consequences of a warming planet. But I am not alone. Please raise your hand if you or someone you know has been affected by climate change.
These young Fijians were thanked for their activism in person by Prime Minister Voreqe Bainimarama at the Fijian mission to the UN in Midtown Manhattan.
This event, I would like to know how Pacific peoples by Pacific Island states and our concerns and our realities of our people are going to be in the outcomes of the climate summit, and if they're going to be part of it and not watered down, as we are being highly impacted by climate change, and we give insignificant amounts of carbon emissions. And I want to know how, and I'm concerned about how big developing states are going to be able to give concrete answers as to how they're going to lower their carbon emissions so we won't be affected.
On the margins of the 74th United Nations General Assembly, Prime Minister Bainimarama launched Fiji's first relocation trust fund aimed at assisting those who have been displaced by climate change.
Our new trust fund is undeniably one of the most effective ways that we can help our communities adapt to climate change. And it is also undeniably one of the most effective ways our international partners can support our adaptation efforts.
You can go to www.economy.gov.fj where you'll find the entire video and all the details of the trust fund and trust fund account details that will be put up on our website, and we look forward to your participation in that. As the Honourable Prime Minister has also highlighted, that we have relocation guidelines that have been put in place. And this is critically important, in particular if you're going to have a particular level of sensitization to gender issues, sensitization to disability, women, about making sure that they're able to continue with their lives in a very normal manner, about education facilities.
Fiji has also partnered with Iceland, New Zealand, Norway and Costa Rica in supporting and giving its voice to the initiation of negotiations on the Agreement on Climate Change, Trade and Sustainability.
It is a pleasure to be here with my counterparts from Fiji, from Iceland, Norway and the Vice Minister from Costa Rica to jointly announce the launch of a first of its kind and forward-looking initiative, an agreement on climate change, trade and sustainability, or ACS as it's aptly known. Now, the five of us believe it's now time to put the rhetoric aside and do something real and something immediate.
One of the key objectives of this agreement is the removal of tariffs on environmental goods and the establishment of new and binding commitments for environmental services. This will increase market access for goods and services that are more sustainable in nature. However, we also propose that the agreement look at both tariff and, more importantly, non-tariff barriers and work to remove subsidies for fossil fuels and other products that harm our climate.
So I think we've come here together today to demonstrate joint leadership, show that we mean business, that we will remove barriers, for example, on environmental goods, as has been mentioned, and that will be an essential step to accelerate the transformation towards low-emission, climate-resilient and sustainable societies.
We fully agree that there is urgent need for action. Climate change is a serious threat to us all, and we clearly have to step up our efforts.
Being part of the ACCTS is a natural step for us, one which reinforces and complements the numerous efforts we have made and will continue making to foster the mutual supportiveness of economic growth and environmental protection and to cope with climate change.
Fiji maintains good relations with other United Nations member states on the basis of equality, non-interference in their internal affairs, and respect for sovereign rights of all peoples and their territorial integrity. Prime Minister Barengem Bainimarama also met with his New Zealand counterpart, Jacinta Ardern. During the meeting, PM Bainimarama reaffirmed his personal commitment to building a stronger bilateral relationship with New Zealand and also commended the New Zealand government for its support towards UN peacekeeping efforts and contribution in the Middle East, especially in Andorf. Other areas of discussion during the meeting included greater collaboration in the areas of trade and investment and climate change. Meanwhile, the UNGA High-Level Interactive Dialogue on Financing for Development on the theme Financing the SDGs and Climate Action Against Rising Debt Burdens, Prime Minister Bainimarama has called on international financiers to provide direct financial assistance instead of loans to countries in need of their support. Bainimarama says such a practice would enable affected countries to rebuild their economies.
When countries suffer from a climate disaster such as Fiji with Cyclone Winston, or the Bahamas with Hurricane Dorian, rather than lending those countries money that simply perpetuates the debt spiral, they should be provided with direct financial assistance to enable them to rebuild their economies in a way that is more climate resilient.
The Honourable Prime Minister also met the Irish President, His Excellency Michael Higgins. During their bilateral engagement, PM Bainimarama thanked the island for being an early partner for Fiji.
With a nice it's just a Fiji island hospitality.
From climate change to sustainable development to nuclear proliferation, the focus of conversation has been both wide-reaching and enormously consequential for our future. Mr. President, I would like to thank you personally for your passionate address at the general debate, where you so bravely condemned the type of divisive rhetoric that is plaguing the world, which you described as the antithesis of multilateralism.
And together we go forward to what is the alternative, and what will in fact bring that great beauty and harmony, an endless gaze of a vast and endless sea into the thinking of the world. It's such a pleasure to be here as President of Ireland and to be here with the Prime Minister of Fiji and to once again have the opportunity of meeting this community of island people, their supporters and those who care for them. Babanacht Mila Buikas, thank you.
The high-level session on the midterm Samoa pathway at the United Nations headquarters, Hollywood actor Mr. Jason Momoa, who featured in the Aquaman movie, has teamed up with Fijian Prime Minister to fight for the survival of small island countries that are most at risk from climate change. Small Island Developing States, or SEEDS, through the implementation of the SEEDS Accelerated of Actions, or Samoa Pathway, will focus the world's attention on a group of countries that remain a special case for sustainable development in view of their unique and particular vulnerabilities.
Fiji has already listed the first sovereign green bond by an emerging market, and we are planning for a blue bond and a shipping bond. And we've worked with the Green Climate Fund to leverage Asian Development Bank support for a large climate resilient water infrastructure project in our capital, Suva.
Meanwhile, Mr. Jason Momoa has also urged for action to address the devastating impact of climate change.
We, the island nations, and all coastal communities are the front lines in this environmental crisis. Our governments and corporate entities have known for decades the immediate changes needed, yet change still has not come. And when the front line is gone, we are doomed. There is no undoing. If you continue to watch, unsympathetic to the issues of island nations, this realization will soon come, that you stood by and witness the world cross the critical tipping point, ushering the death of our planet. Please join us, the Samoa Pathway, in unified commitment to protect and heal the planet. This is for all of us. Aloha. Kukiai Mauna.
The Fijian Prime Minister's final engagement at the United Nations General Assembly was a meeting with the United Nations Secretary General, His Excellency Antonio Guterres. At the meeting, Prime Minister Bainimarama was overjoyed that the UNGA had brought so many young people to the climate table and thanked him for inviting a group of youths from the Pacific to be part of this year's UN Youth Climate Summit ahead of the UNGA 74. He added, these young people brought freshness and great energy into the climate talks, which is what some leaders needed in order to take action.